What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Josh Diaz, and got a special midweek show for you. Kind of a blast from the past, if you will, a story that I used to follow. God, it's been 2008, I guess. The story got big. And by big, I mean it got big. Huge. International, worldwide. The names Kaylee and Casey Anthony still to this day invoke all kinds of emotions and thoughts. One of the more shocking verdicts in recent history, right up there with the OJ trial. I mean, everybody was convinced. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. I'll give you my thoughts, why I think that ultimately she was acquitted. Let's remember that this case has been adjudicated. That doesn't mean I agree with it, but, everybody gets their day in court, and that's how it happens. But like I said, I certainly have some thoughts about it. And Dr. Gary in the house. How are you today, Dr. Gary? Good to see you. It is it Ash Wednesday?
Yes, indeed, Ash Wednesday. 40 days until Lent, of Lent until Easter.
So does that mean you give up something?
We do, and I had ashes, but I removed them because it was I look like Evil Eddie from Fright Night with like the giant thing on my head forehead. It would have been a little strange to come
Did you
on
put
the.
did you put something
It
you
was
had?
very dramatic. Like the ash had
Love it.
like completely covered my forehead, and I just thought it would be strange to have that on here forever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I did remove it, but of course I went, being Catholic.
How was it?
Um,
Was it a nice service?
well, Ash Wednesday is very somber. It's
I've never been.
kind of a day of thinking about mortality, with the notion of ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that kind of thing.
If I perish,
And
I perish.
and yeah, and thinking about one's faults and sins and mistakes and missteps, and then the point is that there's a period of amendment during Lent and then Easter. But
So
it's
that means
that's when it's
40
somber.
days.
Yeah,
So it means 40 days until Easter.
right. And then of course, just for effect, today in New York, there happened to be this very driving rain, and it was very windy, and it was just a very atmospheric day in New York for Ash Wednesday,
Mm.
almost gothically bleak. But I happen to love this season. I think it's the most beautiful in the liturgical calendar, especially the days that come right before Easter. They're one more beautiful than the other.
Yeah.
Holy Thursday, I mean, my goodness, Good Friday, the Holy Saturday, High, Vigil. I mean, these are very, very beautiful things. Very beautiful.
I thought for some reason Easter was in February.
No, I mean it does move all over the place, but you can kind of get an idea of when it is. I think it's a little early this year. Sometimes it's much later than this.
Mm.
So
I
and it
do.
coincides
I
fairly.
do.
It's going to coincide fairly well with Passover.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Very nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's sort of supposed to, right? I mean, you have to remember in that when Christ was on the cross, you would have heard in the background the lambs being slaughtered for the holiday. I mean, that was not an accident. The whole thing was designed to make it clear that he was a Passover lamb. And of course, the significance of the Eucharist is that instead of eating the Passover lamb, you eat him. And
Right.
the,
Right.
of course,
I've done the.
Passover. Right. Yeah, and you remember the whole idea is that whereas in the Jewish faith, the Passover was about an angel of death passing through, and if you had blood on the lintel, you were
I don't
spared.
want to talk
The
about the.
idea is that now you're spared death because you've been washed clean in the blood of the crucifixion. So it's a new Passover. It's very beautiful, and I encourage any Christians in the audience to really try to use it, especially during this profoundly somber um, patch of time we're living in the world. It's very important to kind of step back and not get discouraged and think about that we sort of know how the story ends spiritually. But
Yeah,
it's these are some dark times.
it feels like it,
Dark
and
times.
but
Yeah,
it never. It feels progressive in that way. Like it's felt that way for sometimes
yeah,
like things just seem to get worse and kind of really. And by the way, I want to say that's sort of how your book is really
yeah.
put out there is that it gets the new evil is just the progression of evil and we're gonna talk about some things tonight that you know you could classify it as evil or just anytime there's children involved in with these cases it's very tough but I've noticed and we're going to talk a little bit about the Casey Anthony case that happened in 2008 because she has popped up again and
Yeah.
she has she's in the news and it was kind of a case that I followed by watching Nancy Grace after work all the
Oh,
time.
yes.
I
She was
watched
I mean, I go on Nancy Grace often,
yeah,
not often, but sometimes, and, um, she really had a big hand, I think, and what did she call her? Like, Tot Mama?
Top Mom. Top Mom was the
Yeah.
Top Mom was a big thing. Yeah, a lot of people did follow, although it was probably pretty. I mean, when I was following it, I was probably I was in my like early 20s, and for some, and I'll tell you why, because when I first heard the story, obviously, first of all, it didn't make any sense. It was sort of, it was just baffling, and then as more came out and more came out, the media circus that surrounded the case was absolutely at a fever pitch.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there were so many things about it that didn't make sense. And I know that like majority of people think that she's I wouldn't say majority, but most people that I talk to, think that she had a hand in the death of her child. Although in a court of law, she was found not guilty. And like I said, I think that I have some reasons that I think that happened that I can go over in a little while. But um, I just
Let me ask, and by the way, hello to Seth, um, who's in the audience, Sebastian Rogers' dad. So he's joining us.
good to see you.
It's wonderful. Yeah, because some people are saying hello to him, so I think he's here. But let me ask you before we get into this. There's a question that always buzzes in my mind about this case and OJ and a
Yeah.
couple of other ones. The uh, oh Lord, why is her name going out of my head? Gabby Petito. There are certain cases that for some reason become sensational in the media.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, people who lose children, or people who go missing, or people who murder their wives, these are fairly common occurrences. I
Oh,
understand in the OJ case the sensationalism. He was a public figure. I understand the Gabby Petito situation. Although I felt that there were many deaths of many young women, Native American women, women of color, etc., that went totally invisible. And the front page was filled with that particular case. Not that it wasn't tragic, but I was curious why Gabby. And I have the same question about this. Why did this case so electrify everybody? What was it about? Have
well,
something to do? Well, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, in my personal opinion, that Casey Anthony was and is an attractive lady. She was a young party girl
Hmm.
by her own admittance, and then you have this adorable little girl,
Hmm.
Kaylee, goes missing, And so
Mhm.
if you take it's like that Lifetime type, situation. Gabby Petito, very pretty young girl, full of life. Same thing with, you know, you got little Kaylee, who is just one of the. If you look at pictures of Kaylee Anthony, she's about as precious of a child as you'd ever see. You hear her talk and things like that. But what then throw on top of that this 1 month of I haven't seen her for a month. So then you kinda mix that all into a bowl and you go, "Oh my god."
Right.
Like,
Well,
this
yeah, I think that it's interesting because what you're suggesting is, and this is something that always has always bothered me since I've been involved in true crime after being involved in forensics and clinical work for so long, is I think sometimes with certain cases, the players involved in the little drama, right, the drama of the crime, have a quality that makes them seem um, like television figures. Like they look like actors or actresses, or they're something about them. And it allows us to forget that these are real people, and we watch the case as if we're watching an episode of Murder, She Wrote or something, with that
Yeah.
same desire to see the case solved and all the players coming in. There are people who talk, for example, about installments of information in the Kohlberger case, like it's the latest episode in a miniseries. And the reality is that these are people. I also think that the cases that seem to fascinate us are the ones we identify with. And they are the cases where there's this kind of profound vulnerability, like in the Koberger case, you know, people sleeping in their bed, totally vulnerable in the dark, you know,
Well, and
slumbering,
that and that's another thing if
that
you look
kind of thing.
if you look at
Yeah.
the young to me, the young aspect,
Hmm.
the life that was lost in that home, 4
Hmm.
young, promising, attractive, smart, full of life ch basically
Yeah.
kids, college kids who had their whole lives ahead of them, and then you just go, I mean, what a tragic, tragic thing to have happen. Now,
Hmm.
like you said, these kinds of things, I wouldn't say quadruple murders go on all the time like that. I mean, that is kind of a case that is
Well, I mean, mass murders are not that common, but they happen.
they happen.
Stabbing murders certainly happen.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do happen. So, but in this case, there were blatant lies that she admitted to. She was caught in many lies, and ultimately, it comes down to, I mean, you have this 22-year-old mother back in 2008. And I'll give you some history of the case here in a second for people that I'm sure a lot of people that are tuning in, do know this case. But I'll read a little bit here for you. So, in 2008, the world was captivated by the bizarre behavior displayed by Casey Anthony, the then 22-year-old single mother from Orlando, Florida, was revealed to have spun a web of lies to cover up for the disappearance of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee, that summer. And the Facebook photos of her partying around town and a dearth of emotion in the interviews, fueling the charges of first degree murder before Kaylee's body was discovered later that year. However, there would be no closure for those outraged by a mother's neglect of her child, as Casey escaped conviction in 2011, while the questions of who killed her young daughter and why were never resolved. And so, you have Kaylee that she's born in, God, she'd be what, 20 years old in August, I think. Yeah, so it's been about 20 years. And so you have this young mother. She was 20 years old, I believe, at the time. But it says Kaylee arrives after Casey's, or at least Kaylee arrives after Casey's repeated denials to other family members about her pregnancy. So initially, she lied that she was even pregnant. I mean, she didn't want anybody to know that she was pregnant. She was basically lying about it. She had a fiance named Jesse Grund and another young man who supposedly died in a car accident. The identity of Kaylee's father has never really been publicly revealed. And June 16th, 2008, Casey drives off with Kaylee. Kaylee was raised in Orlando. Kaylee was raised in the Orlando home of her grandparents, Cindy and George Anthony, who are an integral part of this situation, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
You have a
Cindy
picture of the victim to show?
of Kaylee,
Yeah, I think it's always good to
sure,
honor the victim in that way,
certainly do.
although it's very painful to see.
It's
She
not
was so
a
cute, a really cute kid,
oh, the cutest.
like a little cherub face.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah, look how cute she was.
it's very, very adorable.
Can you
And
imagine, if somebody had murdered her? You know, that if it wasn't accidental, for example, if somebody murdered her intentionally, I mean, can you imagine looking into that kid's face and being
no,
able to do that without any compunction? I mean,
certainly.
and imagine if she was somebody who knew the assailant, asking the person why they were doing it and things like that. It's a horrifying image.
Yeah, well, the really the strange thing to me, Dr. Gary, too, is and I know I'm sure you feel this way too. I know you do. We've talked about this. But whether it's my child or not, every instinct in me is to protect the child in any situation that I
Of course.
see of them being in danger. That's just the instinct that's put into us as humans, not just as parents, but as humans, the weak, the vulnerable. And I just I can't, like I said, I can't even watch a dog get hurt. I can't stand that. I can't stand elder abuse. You hear these awful stories of people in rest homes that are just abused and neglected, things like that. I just can't stand anything like that. It bothers me, and I think it probably bothers most of the audience, mm,
Well,
as well.
Josh, when things like that happen on the small scale in the home, they eventually spread and happen in the large scale, even at the level of the country. William Blake said, "A dog starved at its master's gate predicts the ruin of the state."
Mm,
And I think you're seeing that, the corrosion of basic morality and the idea that you need to essentially eliminate anything that stands in the way of your own selfish needs in the time we're living in. And that was one of the ways that some people saw this case who didn't believe the innocent verdict, that there was some selfishness that played into this and that there was a horrendous motive. Is that not correct?
I mean, that's how I feel about it. I mean, I think you pretty much summed that up perfectly. Yeah.
Right. And so that's what we have to think about here is, we're not here to re-adjudicate the case. We're just saying that that's what some people felt. But I think that what you're picking up on is the idea that there's something very strange about, being human beings and being able to have such a callous disregard for somebody, even potentially that might even be related to you, right? But it's just a callous disregard for a human being, particularly a baby. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It would imply that all of the limbic aspects of the brain that are used to make us bond and attach and have empathy and compassion and connect to other human beings just kind of get shut off, like you
Yeah.
can see in people that are psychopathic or people that are narcissistic or people that are traumatized or people that are schizophrenic or people that are, there's all different reasons why it can happen. uh, you know but where it takes on the quality of callous cruelty is really in psychopaths. You don't see schizophrenics going out and hurting people like that or people like that. It's when or dissociated people or people that are traumatized. It's more that those people that are like that because they're psychopaths.
Well, and
And
one of
I
the
think that's what you're getting at is all right, you'd need either extremely taxing environment to drive a person to do something like that, like desperation or whatever, or you'd have to be a psychopath. In fact, in the New Evil, it's the difference between category 10 and 11. They're both what I call elimination murderers, people that get people out of the way that are inconvenient for whatever reason, that are impediments. But people in category 10 are not psychopaths. They have some traits, but they're not psychopaths. Category 11 are psychopaths. So if you eliminate a person like I think Lizzie Borden did, eliminates her father and a stepmother to get money, but she's not really a psychopath based on her history. She's just capable of shutting her feelings off and being kind of callous, but she's not a psychopath. You'd be in category 10.
Yeah.
But if you were a guy going around repetitively getting rid of witnesses because they were going to talk to the law about your, writing bad checks or something else, chances are you're category 11, you're a psychopath. I mention this because I see in the audience people are already asking if, let's say the court was wrong and this woman was somehow involved in death of her where would she go? Well, she'd be somewhere in that elimination category, that section of the scale. But let's be clear, she was adjudicated to
Yeah.
have been not guilty.
Whether we like it or not, I
Um,
mean, that's just how that's what ended up happening. And
do you agree that elimination is what most people think
I
would
think
have
that's
been
what
the
most
motive
people
if she?
think, but I don't
Yeah,
think.
and you have a different theory. Yeah.
I do have a different theory about this case
Mhm.
that I've always sort of felt, and I think that my theory kind of goes to the reason why she was acquitted as well. Not because she was innocent of everything, not because she was a good mother or anything like that, or that she told the truth. None of those things.
Right.
But and I'll get into that a little bit because we're going to listen to the 911
Right.
calls from. And by the
Right.
way, this is a woman now who wants to be an influencer and an
No.
advocate. Okay,
Well,
I mean,
let me be clear because we're getting comments of the audience that are, saying, "Oh, you're saying something defamatory about the." No, what we're saying is
I didn't say
that,
it like that.
yeah, what we are saying is that is what other people say, but this has been adjudicated,
Oh,
and we must abide by, what a courtroom
well,
says,
yeah,
and that
I
is
think
why I am not giving my opinion one way or the other. I will
yeah,
not do that. I think it is important to say something has been adjudicated, and that's the end of it. But it is an
because somebody's
interesting
saying that
story that lingers for people. Yeah.
defamation of her
Mhm.
father during the trial, which did happen. I mean, her father was a central figure for the defense with basically with no proof of anything,
Mm.
but that was one of those things
Oh,
that
you're saying that's what they're referring to
yes, yeah,
about
defamation.
something that happened in the past? Well, that's a little better.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you were saying that she
I've seen that
wants
in
to
her comments.
be an advocate.
She
Yeah.
wants the father, George Anthony, to sue Casey for defamation of character or the lawyer because basically they went up there and said a whole bunch of things about him that really had no bearing, but for some reason the judge allowed that to happen. That they allow, in certain cases, judges will say, no, you can't use that as a defense. It has no merit. In this case, it was used to basically blame, all the problems that Casey had was because of things that her father did to her as a child, and she never even took the stand. So,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
that's
it's a very interesting thing because, um, well, there's something to be said for the idea that there could be, and again, we believe what has been adjudicated, but it is interesting to think about things like intergenerational trauma and things
sure.
like that, right? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So she's doing advocacy work. I saw. I know she's out there, doing some of this stuff. I know it's all over the internet
It's
that she's
everywhere now.
joined social media and all that. And
Yes.
what is she doing? What kind of advocacy work for children, for victims generally?
Yeah, I think it's, like, legal she's like some sort of legal advocate for, and she said that she's wanted to do this before. She was working for a private investigator for
Yeah.
years,
Hmm.
that used to work for the FBI. And now, I don't know exactly what she was doing for him. If she was gathering information or she was clerking or whatever she was doing, file. I don't know. I don't know exactly what she was doing, but she was working for somebody. Uh, and I don't know if she still is or not, but it seems like, they came out to this Peacock. She did a Peacock thing. And
Hmm.
I remember seeing a little bit of that, but yeah, it was telling people that, she works for this PI, and that she had wanted to for some time, and now this is kind of, it seems like she's making her move. However, it is not lost upon me that Casey Anthony's name is synonymous for the death of her child, and that is just something that she will never shake as hard as she tries. I mean, there are going to be people that support her, and there's going to be people that are against her, and there are more people against her than for her, and she's upset about that. After what, 17 years, almost 18 years now, the it
Yeah.
still has not gone away, and it
Well,
won't.
it's very interesting, Josh, because in the true crime community, there is a category of people who that's how they deal with the things that they've experienced. They go out through a kind of altruism defense, right? And they sort of project what happened to them onto other people, and they want to save other people from the kinds of things that they've been through. There is that type. And then, over the years, here and there have been some people that do that, and you kind of get the sense that on some unconscious level, it's a way of sort of injecting themselves into the public eye and all of that. I mean, I would certainly never name a name, but that is a thing that sometimes happens, because there is a kind of a loneliness or a desire for notoriety that can happen too. But I think that most people, their hearts are in the right place. And I think in this particular case, there's different ways to see it. I mean, one possibility is that, somebody wants to try to rehabilitate their name, and to try to do something altruistic because they've become synonymous with, sort of what happened to Lizzie Borden. Lizzie Borden was acquitted, but everybody basically thought she was guilty. The woman had to drive around in a chauffeured car wearing a black netting over her face. You
Like the
know, kids would make fun of her. She was tormented. She basically stayed in her house all the time. When she died, she was so lonely, she donated all her money to animals.
Right,
She wasn't
right.
even talking to her sister, who probably knew what the heck really happened in that crime. In other words, we don't know if this is a situation of a person that has been ostracized and is trying to rehabilitate themselves. The other possibility is, like I said, that there are some people that they like the attention, they like the infamy, they like having the name in the newspaper, they like whatever, and it becomes a way of insinuating yourself into things. You see both of these kinds of things, and people have to make their minds up about what morally is kind of going on there. But it can go both ways. I refuse to make a judgment of it. I haven't seen enough information.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I definitely have one, and like I said, we're gonna play the 911 calls that uh, set off this chain reaction of just an
Oh,
insane
from the
media
mom, from our mother.
from the
Yeah.
mother. And I know, and I can already hear the chat, and I can already hear the people in the comments, and I understand what you're going to say. You're going to say her mother enabled her. Her mother was too soft on her. Fact of the matter is, her mother's a victim of losing a granddaughter. And I understand how some people feel that in this case, that maybe not that I don't believe her mother had anything to do with this. There was never any evidence that her mother had anything to do with it. Now, I do believe that her mother may not have been honest during the trial, um, and that she felt like she was losing another child. Not a grandchild, but a child this time. Now, I understand that people are going to feel that way, and I'm not going to dispute you on that. But you cannot deny the fact when you hear these phone calls from Cindy Anthony that she was desperate. And when I say desperate, it's as desperate of phone calls as you can imagine. Initially, when she calls in, she's trying to report her daughter for grand theft auto for taking the car that was owned by the parents. And she was using it as leverage to get her to say where Kaylee was. When she doesn't break, she makes a second phone call. When she doesn't break, she makes a third phone call. And I'm telling you that these phone calls, if you have not heard them, are absolutely heartbreaking. And we're going to play them. I'm going to play you the
Some
first.
of them, but not all of them. So it's going to be interesting to hear.
Yeah.
And this is like 30. Was it 31 days or something after the
It was about
since
that.
they'd seen the child? Is that the number of days?
Something I think
30
so.
some odd days. I think it was 31. Anyway, go ahead.
30 to 31. I think it was 31 days. It was a month. Let's just put it that way. So this was at the trial. They played these phone calls. I mean, and they're just absolutely horrific.
30 hours as
in my Okay, what's happening? I have someone here that I need to be arrested in my home. They're there right now? A possible missing child. I have a 3-year-old that's been missing for a month. A 3-year-old? Yeah. Have you?
I'm sorry about that. It's the wrong one. Hold on. Let me go back to the first phone call.
You mean you have the footage of them playing it back in court?
Yeah, it's been all over the place.
Yeah. No, I'm just curious what you're going to show.
Matter of fact, I did
imagine that being in court and hearing your own voice on the call and everything
I would never want to. It's. I mean, like, look
a lot
at her.
Worse things happen than that in court, Josh. I've had to talk to people that have had to go to court and see on a giant screen images of their kid dead, mutilated,
Yeah, well, if you think about
whatever for the jury.
Think about the Scott Peterson trial. I mean, the young boy, and everybody noted the reaction of Scott. Seemed to be not a lot of reaction there.
That was another made-for-TV style crime, right? Yeah.
It's like the biggest.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, I drove to the police department here on Pershing, but you guys are closed. I need to bring someone into the police department. Can you tell me where the closest one I can come into?
What are you trying to accomplish by bringing them to the station?
I have a 22-year-old person that has grand theft sitting in my auto with me.
So the 22-year-old person stole something?
Yes.
Is this a relative?
Yes.
Where did they steal it from?
My car and also money.
Okay, is this your son?
Daughter.
Okay, so your daughter stole money from your car?
No, my car was stolen. We retrieved it today. We found out where it was at. I've retrieved it. I've got that, and I've got affidavit from my banking account. I want to bring her in. I want to press charges.
Where did all of this happen?
Oh, it's
so now you can hear her, she's talking about she has bank statements that Casey Anthony, I believe did get in trouble for stealing money from her parents. So once again, this is kind of a little leverage pool.
Been happening.
No, but I need to establish a jurisdiction is what I'm trying.
Oh, I live in Orlando.
Yeah, but what address did these thefts occur at?
Well, I guess my residence, I guess. 4937 Hope Spring Drive.
That's actually going to be in the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office, ma'am, not the Orlando Police Department.
All righty.
Let me transfer you over to the communications section.
Now, she hasn't mentioned that Kaylee is missing because what she's trying to do here is she's trying to get the police involved and go, I'm calling the cops. I'm sick of this. Where is she? And you'll just hear how stubborn and not backing down Casey is and was and seems to forever have been about the whereabouts of her daughter, Kaylee.
Orange County.
Okay. Now, is the Orlando Sheriff's Department the one on 436 is that open this afternoon? this evening?
The substation you're at on purging, if it's Orlando Police, we're open primarily during the day. But that's not the sheriff. That's the city police, which does not have jurisdiction for your
I know there's a sheriff's department on 436.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer you to the sheriff's communications section, and you can determine that. Hold on.
Okay. Because my next thing will be down the child thing, and we'll have a court order together.
So now you can hear her. You can tell that Casey is off to the side here while mother is confronting her. I mean, it seems like she has laid everything out. Look, I know you've been stealing. I know you've been doing this. I can prove this. I can prove that. And she turns and says to her, because the next thing will be, I'm calling, child services, and we're going to, we'll get an order, because basically she's demanding that she bring her grandchild back, but she doesn't want Casey in trouble for this. She just wants her granddaughter. And right now she's using other things that don't involve Kaylee, as you can hear.
If that's what you want to play, we'll do it. And you'll never. Well, then you have one more day. No, I'm not giving you another day. I've given you a month. All right, Senator.
Mrs. Anthony, did you ran past
Let's see.
and
Okay, so that's the end of the first call. Now the second call, it gets more desperate. And we'll listen to that.
But already, Josh, and again, I'm not making any diagnostic interpretation, but it sounds like some things that would jump out as potentially interesting, somebody who was thinking that way, is that there seems to be some fragmentation in the family structure because of somebody that is kind of willful and entitled and potentially willing to do things that are a little selfish or don't take into consideration the feelings of other people, and that basically has people at wit's end in terms of the chaos that comes in their wake and all that. So you don't get the sense of at least by accusation, of a warm and toasty daughter, in the house doing nothing wrong, right? You get more the sense of a unruly, entitled person, right? I mean, don't
Yes.
you get that feeling immediately, like a contumacious person, a person who is not disciplined and doesn't want to be told what to do, and and that kind of thing, and that's really interesting. Incidentally, almost word for word, that's the same stuff people said about Lizzie Borden,
Right. No,
which is interesting. I find that description. Now, look, I'm going to say this only as food for thought and not as an accusation. But if you examine the personality structures of a lot of people that fall into the category 10, the elimination murderer type, who isn't fully psychopathic, you would describe most of them as pretty entitled, capable of lying a lot, emotionally immature, highly dependent on their love objects for what they need, willing to do anything to bump people out of the way that impulsively that prevent what it is that they want to get, and profoundly selfish. Selfish people, the kind of people who get in trouble for things like shoplifting and passing bad checks.
Well,
And
she's accused of stealing checks from a friend.
yeah, it's a common picture in that type of. That this could just be a coincidence, but I have found that to be true of that type.
I think she actually got in
The
trouble.
kind of narcissistic presentation, yeah.
And and I see people in the side say, "Well, Cindy raised that brat." Well, she also raised Lee, who was a very productive member of society and turned out to be a very good man, and testified against his sister in the trial. Was very honest, very heartbroken. So I get it. Sometimes even sometimes raising a child that doesn't turn out exactly how you want them to happens, no matter how hard you try. And I believe his name was Lee, who has been out of the spotlight for years, and is a very, from everything that I could tell, a very good person.
Yeah.
Just from what
Interesting.
I understand.
Incidentally, what was the socioeconomic status of this family?
I think they were just kind of middle class. Her dad was I think Cindy was a nurse at some point, and I believe that George was a sheriff as well.
Mm. A nurse and a sheriff.
Yeah, I think so.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but I believe
Uh,
they're class, from Florida, and yeah.
Imagine having a father who literally stands for the moral code like that.
Well, and that's the other thing too, because you'll hear it in these phone calls. So when we get ready to listen to the second phone call, like I said, you can say what you want about Cindy, that if you think that she was a bad mother or whatever. What I'm telling you is that the reason that this even got this far, well, eventually probably would have, was because Cindy was demanding answers.
What's the address of your emergency?
4937 Hope Spring Drive.
4937 Hope Springs.
Drive, Orlando.
Okay, what's happening?
I have someone here that I need to be arrested in my home.
They're there right
I have
now?
a possible missing child. There were 3.
So there's the first time. All these calls are just back to back to back, all in the same. But now she's like, now I'm going to report. I'm going to report Kaylee is missing because the other stuff that I just threatened you with. But it doesn't matter because Casey has no recourse, because as we all know, that Kaylee, even at this point, is not with us anymore.
3-year-old that's been missing for a month.
A 3-year-old?
Yes.
Have you reported that?
I'm trying to do that now, ma'am.
Okay, what did the person do that you need arrested?
My daughter.
For what?
For stealing an auto and stealing money. I already spoke with someone. They said they would patch me through the Orlando Sheriff's Department, have a deputy here. I was in the car. I was going to drive her to the police station, and no one's open. They said they would bring a deputy to my home when I got home to call them.
So she stole your vehicle?
Yes.
When did she do that?
On the 30th. I just got it back from the impound. I'd like to speak to an officer. Can you have someone come out to my house?
Okay. Okay, I gotta ask you these questions so I can put them in the call, okay?
Okay.
30th of June?
Yes.
Okay, how old is your daughter?
Heartbreaking, that woman's
22.
face, gosh.
Look, and I've watched many interviews, and I could see progressively sort of the mental breakdown that she has over time. You could just see it on her face, and also her father does not speak with her. I believe that her mother has some communication, not a lot, but George absolutely does not talk to her. And he's even went on to say is, I lost my daughter and my granddaughter, and he wants nothing to do with her, which I think is unfortunately understandable.
But what do you think? Just curious.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of what's going through her mind? Is she heartbroken because she lost her grandchild? Is she heartbroken because of guilt and feeling that somehow, I'm a bad mother because I had a daughter that's accused of this, that, and the other? I
I'm
mean, what do you think she's feeling?
I'm sure that I think there's a lot of emotions that
Mixed.
she's feeling, but I think
Mm.
most of it, and I think in this, you mean on these phone calls?
Well, here
Oh, here?
on the screen with the tears flowing down her face. What do you think
I
this
think
is
that she
about?
just can't believe that she probably just can't believe that it's ended up here. She knows that Kaylee's dead now, and her daughter is on trial for first degree capital murder, and if she's found guilty, will receive the death penalty. The death penalty was on the table. I mean, that was one of the things that they were. So
Right. And
I
she would
think,
have to believe that she raised a child
yeah,
who could do that to their own child.
correct.
I
And
mean, it's like a kind of sometimes when you're dealing with people that you think don't have guilt, you feel it for them.
yeah,
That's how parents are. They're ashamed of the if they're, it's like if you have a kid who you've raised them a certain way, and then they go into the store and they rob the store, you go back to the store with your hand covering your face and give the money back to the store owner, and you say, and instead of just apologizing on behalf of the kid, you say, I just want you to know I didn't raise my kid that way. I
Right.
don't want you to think that that's the kind of thing that came from. It's so I mean, it makes me think that if that she was afraid that if it turned out that her daughter was guilty, she would have to embrace what that meant about her. That look that she has looks like that mask that you get when you've just been overcome by grief and guilt and shame, and it's terrible. You could see this poor woman was like the heart of the family,
Yeah.
and felt that for everybody. Did you ever feel guilt like that over something? You just couldn't get through the day because it just weighed on you so badly. It's a terrible feeling.
Yeah, no, I've absolutely I've felt all kinds of guilt before. It's actually one of my major issues in life, to be honest with you, is that I
Yeah.
feel guilty for a lot of things, and a lot of things that I even know that I couldn't change or whatever,
Yeah.
I still feel guilty about them. And
Right. No,
guilt
you can
is
get really neurotic over it.
guilt is
Yeah. You know,
awful.
like when you stay up at night and you just sit up and you look at the ceiling and you think, how could I have said that?
Yeah,
How could I have failed that
yeah,
person?
of course,
How could I have done it? It's a terrible thing, and you get that feeling that she's thinking, where did I go wrong? How did I wind up
absolutely.
here?
Yeah, well,
You know what
how
I'm saying?
yes,
How did it happen?
yes,
Remember Lady Macbeth when she can't sleep? She's sleepwalking because she encouraged her husband to kill King Duncan in the Shakespeare play Macbeth, and she starts developing this neurosis, which ultimately leads to her suicide, where she thinks she sees little drops of blood on her hands all the time, no matter
yeah,
how many times she washes them. And she says, "All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." In other words, the idea that you could ever get the guilt out is and it's terrible because the whole thing just makes me think that that family would have been stricken by this terrible feeling that if our kid is not acquitted, we have to think we raised a monster and we did something wrong. If they are acquitted, maybe we'll always have our suspicions, and the whole family is going to be ripped apart. It's a terrible thing. And I mean, can you imagine? And this kid was so cute and how much they loved her and all that. Now, this is my question though, as we're listening to this. Why is the call made so many days later?
well, from what I understand was that, um, she was telling everybody that, she had a babysitter, but she left her there was some sort of dispute. I don't know what it was over. I can't remember the details. There was a dispute in the household. She basically played the emotional hostage with her child,
Mhm.
saying, Kaylee and I are gonna leave, which by the way is something that happens a lot. A lot of kids use that against their parents as grandparents, as either leverage, or I call it
Yeah.
being an emotional hostage, saying, you won't see your grandkid again if this is how you're going
Yeah.
to treat me, blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
basically, she was just telling her, um, you know, you don't get to see her. She's my daughter, not
Right.
yours. What I think is what's important, because she had custody of Kaylee. And finally, that's why these phone calls are happening now, because she hasn't seen. It's sort of the same thing in the Boswell case. Nobody had seen the baby for so long. And they're like, if I don't see her, I'm calling the cops because I don't believe what you're selling anymore. And so she found out that she had been stealing from her, and that also that about the car. So now she's like, I have some sort of leverage to try to get her to produce my granddaughter. She can't tell me anymore
It's very
to
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, to frig off, because I now have her by the balls. Well, for lack of a better term, but she doesn't, because Casey has nothing to offer, meaning all she has to do is produce Kaylee alive, just any sign of life whatsoever, and this all goes away. But she can't. And the first attempt to get her to turn, to turn the child over fails. So that's where we're at here on this second call and how it has escalated so rapidly.
So how does if the child were eliminated from the picture, what effect would that then have? What gain would there be? Like in the Lizzie Borden case, the gain would be a financial
Well,
windfall and freedom
she
from.
was a partier, and it's very well documented that she was a partier, that
That I know. Yeah.
she enjoyed her timeouts, and I think, which happens a lot as well, the parents were probably sick and tired of babysitting for her while she went out and partied. And I'm sure there were some disputes there. I mean, honestly, when you have a child and you want to go out and party every weekend, and I understand why you would get so annoyed and upset. And it's like, you have a child, so you need to be here with your child instead of going out and partying every weekend. But unfortunately, sometimes a 22-year-old, a young, attractive female who gets a lot of attention from men, and she's old enough to enter clubs now and go party, and she wanted to party. And I'm telling you that, and she would tell people that she had a job. I mean, she lied about a lot of stuff. One of the craziest things about this is when the detectives I mean, I could do 20 episodes on this case, but like, the one of the detectives takes her to Universal. She says she works there, okay? And she walks down a hall, says, "I'll take you to my office." And they're walking down the hall. He knows that she doesn't work there. She knows that she doesn't work there. She did at one time. And they got up right to the door, and she turned around and says, "Okay, I lied." And he says, "You know what?" And he says, "We need to go into one of these rooms and we're going to talk." I mean, she walked them all the way down the hall. Like, it's what is going through somebody's mind when they do that? She knows she doesn't work there. He knows it. He lets her do this. I mean, it shows that, like, where her mind was. I was when I heard that whole scenario, I was just like, that's one of the craziest things. She just turns around and says, "All right, you got me. I don't actually work here." So at that moment, he's pissed off, the detective, because he knows that she's wasting time. Her child's missing. She's claiming now that somebody has her, and we'll hear a little bit about that in these calls.
Okay, what's her name?
My name?
Her name.
Her name, Casey Anthony. Casey.
And your name?
Cynthia Anthony.
Cynthia, can I get a phone number that I can reach you at?
407-808-4731.
And you said you have the vehicle back?
Yes. I have the statement.
Casey's there right now?
Yes, I got her. I finally found her after a month. She's been missing for a month.
That was another thing, was that the mother had to go find her, tracking her friends down. A friend of hers got a hold of her, of the mother, because there was some money that had been stolen through writing checks, forged checks. So she was out, like, scouring the highways and byways.
I found her, but we can't find my granddaughter.
Okay, how tall is Casey?
5'1.5".
Thin, medium, or heavy build?
Thin.
Color hair?
Brown.
What color shirt is she wearing?
White.
What color pants?
Oh, they're shorts. They're plaid. They're like pink and teal and white and black plaid.
Does she have any weapons on her?
No.
Is Casey not telling you where her daughter is?
Correct.
Okay, we'll have a deputy out to you as soon as one's available, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cited utterance at the time.
Yes, by this time,
All right. So now we get to the third phone call, which is the most desperate of all, because now Casey has to come up with something. So what she says is that she knows that she's been kidnapped by a lady named Zenaida Gonzalez, which turns out to be absolutely not true, that it is another lie. And she has finally admitted that she's missing. Now, we know now in retrospect that she wasn't actually missing. Everybody else thought she was missing, but Casey knows exactly, well, at least that's what I think, that knows exactly where she is and exactly what happened to her. So let me bring up the third call here. This one is about as dramatic of a phone call as you'll hear. And you'll notice the 911 dispatch lady, when she talks to Casey, is, for lack of a better term, flabbergasted at what they're reporting after 31 days. Here we go.
Be admitted to evidence over defense objections as states numbered.
there is a stipulation as it relates to the accuracy as well.
Read to you the following stipulation. Cindy Anthony made a recorded call to 911.
911, what's your emergency? I called a little bit ago. The deputy sheriff said I found out my granddaughter has been taken. She has been missing for a month. Her mother finally admitted that she's been missing.
Okay, what is
here now?
Okay, what is the address that you're calling from?
4937 Hope Spring Drive.
Dr. Gary, first of all, just listening to it gives me chills hearing this. Just the desperation is just what a terrible thing to go through, to be honest.
Talking about a 3-year-old little girl.
4937 what?
Hope Spring, HOPESPRING Drive, Orlando. My daughter finally admitted that the baby's in the store. I need to find her.
Your daughter admitted that the baby is where?
The babysitter took her a month ago that my daughter's been looking for. I told you my daughter was missing for a month. I just found her today, but I can't find my granddaughter. She just admitted to me that she's been trying to find her herself. There's something wrong. I found my daughter's car today, and it smells like there's been a dead body in the damn car.
Okay, what is the 3-year-old's name?
Did you hear the dead? She said, I found my daughter's car today and it smells like there was a dead body in the car.
Caylee, Anthony.
Haley Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, is she white, black, or Hispanic?
She's white.
How long has she been missing for?
I have not seen her since the 7th of June.
What is her date of birth?
8/9/2000. Oh God, she's 3. She's 2005. George Carey's missing.
So you can hear where she's saying Kaylee's missing. She's talking to George. George is now, there because, he shows up as well. And now she's telling George that Kaylee's missing.
George Carey,
I don't think she's just missing. They have a whole fear of what happened.
Who would believe that their daughter would do the unthinkable? I mean, that's what she's on trial for here. And who would think that somebody would lie about that, their own child. Now, look, did Casey have the best reputation around? No. There's a big jump between being a liar and being an accused of first-degree murder of your own child. I mean, that's a big leap.
Casey said Zanny took her a month ago. missing someone.
Okay, I understand. Can you calm down for me for just a minute and I need to know what's going on, okay? I'm gonna try and talk. Is your daughter there?
I'm on the phone with them.
Is your daughter there?
Yes.
Can I speak with her? Do you mind if I speak with her? Thank you.
I called them 2 hours ago. They haven't gotten here. She finally admitted to Zanny took her.
I mean, look at her bot. I mean, she's basically in the fetal position, or she's headed that way. I mean, this is just crazy.
Months ago,
Ma'am.
they want to talk to
Makes you question everything you ever thought you knew about the world.
Yeah, like her. That's what I'm saying. Like, I know that there are people that think that, and I believe that she did not tell all the truth on the stand against her daughter. I truly believe that's just how I mean, it seemed that but it's her daughter, for God's sakes. But you got to also go back and think, I mean, she's the one that turned her in as well. And I think, she was saying that, she was the one that was on the computer and, searching for certain things that I don't believe that she ever did search for. And I think she lied about being at work, that she was supposed to be at work on a certain day, yet she said she was at home. And, it's kind of this battle here, I mean, she knows that her granddaughter's dead, and she knows that her daughter could be, possibly executed because, if she's found guilty of this crime.
Hello?
Do you know, Josh, when the autopsy was done, what the official cause of death was?
They didn't know. No, it had been too long. And that is going to go into, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that here in a little bit, after we hear this, is
Mhm.
because no, they unfortunately did not have a cause of death, which
Right, so it becomes very difficult to say whether it was accidental or
I think it was 9 months.
intentional.
9
Right,
months.
but I thought that there was even some idea about her. I thought the idea was that they thought chloroform might have been used, that there
They
was
said that
some
there was chloroform found,
suffocation.
traces of chloroform found in the trunk. There were also searches on the internet about chloroform, and
Duct tape over the right?
there was duct tape over the mouth, and they also believe that there was a heart-shaped sticker that may have fallen off, but it left the
Right.
glue. Do you remember that as well?
I remember the heart-shaped sticker.
Who would do that, typically not an abductor.
Hi. Well, can you tell me what's going on a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
And you know who has her?
I know who has her. I've tried to contact her. I actually received a phone call today, now from a number that is no longer in service. I did get to speak to my daughter for about a minute.
So she's now claiming that she spoke to her daughter for just a moment, and basically saying that she's still alive, which is just not true either.
Okay, did you guys call and report a vehicle stolen?
Yes, my mom did.
Okay, so there's been a vehicle stolen too?
No, this was my vehicle.
What vehicle was stolen?
It's a 98 Pontiac Sunfire.
Okay, I have deputies on the way to you right now for that. So now your 3-year-old daughter is missing. Kaylee Anthony.
Yes.
White female.
Anthony. Yes, white female.
3 years old. 8/9/2005 is her date of birth.
Yes.
And you last saw her a month ago?
31 days. From 31 days.
Who has her? Do you have a name?
Her name is Zanny Fernandez Gonzalez.
Who is that?
And which a lady named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez, also known as Zanny the Nanny, who never actually existed, but a lady by that name did exist that had nothing to do with this case. I believe sued her civilly as well because of this, because that name, once again, synonymous with this case. Zenaida had every reason to sue her.
That
I don't know whatever happened about it. I don't know if she had any money to pay out, but
babysitter.
She's been my nanny for about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Why are you calling now? Why didn't you call 31 days ago?
I've been looking for her and have gone through other resources to try to find her, which was stupid.
Okay. Can you give me the name of the nanny again? Like spell it out for me.
Zenaida, Zenaida.
Last name? Fernandez.
Hyphen Gonzalez. I think the officers are here.
The officers are there?
Yes.
Okay, hold on a second. Don't hang up with me yet. I need you. Okay.
Can I have a break, sir? Can I have a break?
A drink? Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess.
she calmly looks at the judge and asks for a break, a well-deserved one, I think. Now, so that is how the entire situation started, by Cindy calling. Now I have some thoughts on how or why Casey was found not guilty, and I'll share those with you now. First of all, when you don't have a cause of death, it's hard to charge somebody with murder. They do it. I believe that the prosecutors overcharged her. I believe that the jury, without knowing a cause of death, probably wasn't comfortable putting someone to death because without, knowing if it was actually a murder or not. Now, I think, this is just my personal opinion, and I could be way off, and some of you will disagree with me and some of you may not, or some of you will disagree with me and some of you will agree with me. I think this whole Zanny the Nanny thing plays a really big part in the case. I believe that because George and Cindy refused to watch Kaylee so she could go out and party, I believe that she was giving her stuff to make her sleep. I think that her health either failed or she overdosed the child, and at that point did what needed to get rid of her and get rid of her body. I
Was
believe
dumped in the woods, right?
dumped in the woods, just off the I think it was like 3/4 of a mile from the house. Everybody missed it, by the way. You had bounty hunters. You had this man named Richard Padilla shows up into town, this bounty hunter who bails her out of jail. It's like, I'm going to take you to where she is. That never happened. So then he takes his bail. They revoke the bail. She goes back to
I
jail.
remember a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, it was an absolute circus. EquiSearch was out there, and by the way, EquiSearch does fantastic work, but they missed her. That happens, unfortunately. She was found by a meter reader who was peeing on the side of the road, and he saw a bag, walked over to it, and sort of moved it, I believe, with his foot, and went, "Oh my God," and called. And then the call, I don't know if you remember this. She said, I think I found a human skull, and it's in the area of the Casey or the Kaylee Anthony home. And I remember the dispatcher goes, "Oh my God," or something like that.
Yeah. Well, Josh, when a child goes missing, you have to use a process of elimination to think whether the reason the child is missing is something that went on inside the home or somebody from outside the home. And the trouble with this case is there's no outside party that seems to make a lot of sense in terms of having anything to do with this. you see what I'm saying? Because, like, for example, what are the reasons why somebody would abduct a child? Now, we could rattle off cases in which each of these occur, but I mean, is going to sound an awful lot like our discussion in Summer Wells or our discussion in other cases. But the primary reason why a stranger would take a child out of a home would be sexual, right?
Yeah.
Now, granted, the body was in a state of deterioration and we don't know. There could have been touching or other things like that, but there's no reason to believe that we are aware of that there was any such thing that went on here. Now, the second possibility is you take the child for ransom, and there was no request for ransom, right?
Correct.
Not even an attempt to fake one, like like what went on, I think, in the JonBenet Ramsey case, right, with the artificial ransom story, or to a certain extent, what I think went on in the Lindbergh baby case. I think when that demand was made, that kid was already dead. And the third possibility is somebody who, for whatever psychological reason, wants a child and the kid accidentally dies, like a person who couldn't have a kid themselves or whatever, but they don't kill the kid. It would have to be an accident that they died or something like that.
Correct.
So if those three things don't make a lot of sense in terms of strangers being involved, all right, well, then who that knows you outside of the home would take the child? Somebody in a custody situation, another parent, whatever, but that there is no other known parent here, correct?
Yeah, the identity of the father has never been disclosed.
So
And she
doesn't
very
make any
not
sense.
even know, unfortunately, who the father is.
Right. So there's no dynamic in which one could understand somebody outside the home wanting to take this kid and kill the kid and dump them unceremoniously and all that. So what are you left with? Remember, I always say, as Sherlock Holmes said, when you've eliminated the impossible, no matter whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth.
Yes.
If you eliminate all the possibilities of everyone outside, what are you left with? Somebody inside. And who would have a motive to do that? So you can understand how police came to the conclusion they did and how the trial happened. And I don't think it was so outrageous. But I think what you're getting at, Josh, is that not all homicides are murders. There could also be manslaughter situations and things where people kind of are treated a certain way and they die or they're, whatever. In other words, we don't really know what went on, if anything, involving
There's a lot of
the
theories. I mean, people
accused at
think
the
that she
time. We have no
drowned.
idea. Right. And so there's all different possibilities, but the point is it just seems bizarre that there's no way to explain it outside of the home.
Correct. And that's kind of what I always go back to with this case is that most of the time it's not some sort of stranger abduction. Now, stranger abductions absolutely happen, but there was obviously a rift between the parents and Casey. Now, if you're a juror and you know nothing about this case, if you didn't pay attention to it or anything like that, if you were just pick, because they don't want anybody to have any preconceived notions or anything like that. Most people believed that she was guilty of murder. And a lot more people, or not a lot more, but then another batch of people believed that she was absolutely guilty of the death of her child. And that's where I fall in. I don't know if she's guilty. I don't know if she did murder her. She was found guilty, or excuse me, she was found not guilty of that.
Right.
But I 100% believe, in my personal opinion, that she is responsible for the death of her child. And I believe she's the one that discarded her child. And I also believe that she's the one that covered all of these things up because she didn't want to lose her freedom, her partying, or whatever it is that the hell that she was doing. I believe you wouldn't have to convince me very hard that it was that. I don't think that she I don't think that she murdered her. I think that what she did was she accidentally killed her and then discarded her like you would do with a body so you don't get in trouble. That's what I felt. And I still feel that way. Now uh, she was never found guilty of anything. However, when you start going through, and this is called tainting a jury pool, this stuff happens. She was in Florida. Most people thought she was guilty. So you get people up there, you're going through jurors and you're going, the Casey Anthony. Are you familiar with the Casey Anthony case? And people go, yeah. Do you have an opinion? Oh yeah, I think she's guilty. Next. Okay. And then and then on and on and on and on and on until you get somebody who goes, I never heard of her before. I don't know anything about the case. They put them on. Okay. Trying to convict somebody of first degree murder without a cause of death is not a good idea when you're a prosecutor. They overcharged her and the jury was not willing to put her to death because of that. Now, there were things that they should have and could have charged her with. She could have, negligent homicide or manslaughter, all kinds of degrees of that. Personally, I think once again that she was completely responsible for the death of her daughter, but I just don't think that I think that they tried her wrong. That's just my personal opinion, and I don't know. What say you?
Well, look, I refuse to have an opinion because the case was adjudicated and she was found innocent. So I simply don't want to make any speculative But I will say that what I think bothers people who do believe, even if they believe as you do, that it was an accident and that she was involved and it was an accident. I think what bothers people is what seems to be a totally callous disregard while you have a kid, like gone and you're out kind of having a ball and the covering it up and all the things that would be implied, suggesting somebody who just basically had no heart about it. And I think that's the part that makes people feel, that kind of ick
No
they get
question about it. And like if you
about
say
it,
that here,
the
Josh, I love
callousness.
you. Well, look at it here, Josh. I love you, but she killed her daughter. I'm not saying she didn't. I don't even disagree with that. But there's different ways that people kill people, as Dr. Gary was just stating. Like I said, it wouldn't take much for me to be convinced of,
Right.
but the problem is, and I'm just telling you from a technical standpoint, the reason she wasn't found guilty is because they had no way to prove how she died. Now, if you find a body and there's a big crack in the skull, or if the neck, you can prove the neck is snapped, or you can prove that there's poison in the system, but they couldn't. They just
Right.
couldn't do it.
Well, let's just say it seems rather ridiculous because the kid didn't die in her bed.
Not at all. And she was wrapped up in a bag with duct tape over her face, and she was disrespected in the worst way. And I believe that Casey is responsible for that. But that's just how I feel. And that's how a lot of people feel. And we're allowed to feel that way.
Sure.
Now everybody
Everybody
gets
has their own opinions. Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, and but I will tell you that like even if you look at the literature on serial sexual homicide, a totally different crime. How do offenders kill for the first time when usually they're committing SA over and over again, and they assert so much force that the victim dies. They don't set out to do it. The person dies, or they have to eliminate the witness because the person is talking, in such a way that they say, "Oh my God, this person's going to rat me out. I have to." But the point is that with a lot of them, it's just that so much force is asserted the person dies. Now, these are psychopathic people. They're sadistic people. They take steps to cover it up. Once they've killed, they can dismember. They can throw bodies out like garbage. They can hold whatever. But it's accidental for some of them at first. In other words, it doesn't imply anything about the character structure or morality of a person if the person dies accidentally. It's more, what do they do? Why are they doing the thing that leads to death in the first place. It's that kind of thing. And I think what bothers people who see guilt here is they think this is a person with a kind of callous
Yeah, but
disregard.
yes,
Yeah, and it bothers them. Right.
this was a
And I understand.
This was a circumstantial case that should have been tried that way. They went for the in the legal term, basically the whole kit and caboodle with first degree murder, death penalty on the table. Didn't mean that she was going to get it, but it was certainly a now, you know, the duct tape doesn't suggest premeditation. The duct tape suggests that she was trying to get rid of um whatever whatever had happened. She was trying to hide the evidence. I mean, I don't know if she put if you know if she did that with knowledge before or after, but that's the point of it. You don't know. So how can you convict her for first degree murder? I wouldn't care if they did at all. I mean, that's just me, but it doesn't to me it doesn't prove anything.
Although I
Now,
will tell you that statistically speaking, women who intentionally kill their children usually are extremely mentally ill. It's very unusual to do that. What you sometimes see is women who repetitively kill children because they want the attention that is associated with the child dying, like Mary Beth Tinnig, whose child dies naturally. There's a funeral, everybody's going and paying attention to her, and this essentially invisible woman suddenly becomes the center of everybody's attention. And so she starts killing the other kids to get the attention. There's that type. There is the elimination murderer who, like Susan Smith, who puts her two kids in the car, drowns them, and makes up a story that an African American man pulled her over, hijacked the car. Remember that carjacked took the
yeah,
car off, and there are people like that. There's the absolutely horrendous case, which I'm writing about for the New Evil, the Jalissa Thaler case, one of the worst cases I've ever heard of. Do you remember that case?
I don't. Mm-mm.
The just so that I make sure I get the age correct, I just want to check in my database here, say the wrong thing. But the Jalissa Thaler case was a woman who had slipped through the system, drug use and other kinds of things, and she wanted to get rid of her 6-year-old child on the spectrum. And so she was driving with him in his booster seat, and she just whipped out a shotgun and killed him in the booster seat.
I think I do
And
remember.
she nonchalantly pulled over at a gas station to get the tire fixed and had to remove the brain matter from herself. And, there are people like that, but that's a disturbed person who had a drug problem and other kinds of issues. In other words, what I'm trying to say is mothers rarely do that intentionally. There are cases where there's abuse that goes so far that the child perishes from the discipline or the abuse. That can happen, but most of the time, I think what you're sort of getting at, Josh, is that statistically, unless somebody is like completely psychotic or whatever, that a lot of these are not intentional.
Yeah.
A lot of these are
Well, you
things where
and
the child slips
I know that
away in the middle of right.
I know that there's a lot of people that will watch this, and then some in the chat they're going, "But the duct tape, Josh, the duct tape." I don't disagree with you, but it doesn't prove how she died. They could not prove that she died from being suffocated with duct tape. If they
I think it
could,
was an example of a case where science um, led to the acquittal. It's a thing where like
of
you don't
course.
have all the data you need. It's that kind of thing. It's a very modern case in that way, where the scientific evidence was just lacking, to be able to
And that
prove
was the
beyond a
problem
shadow
with
of
them.
doubt.
They were overcharging her because once again,
Right.
and I'm telling you, this is just from a very technical legal standpoint. That's how she got off. And unfortunately, I mean, I feel that she was completely responsible, but I don't know how. I have my theory, and I told you my theory. I think that there was I think that she was giving her things. I think that's where that Zanny the Nanny thing came in. And I think that, and even
Wasn't the
George.
nanny story made up? Wasn't that a lie? The nanny
Yes.
story? Like there
Yes.
was no nanny, right?
There was no nanny. No.
No.
But, about the duct tape, it was around her head, it was around her nose, and around her mouth. And I understand that. And then there was what they said was a heart sticker, which is just insane. Outline, the glue. I don't know. It's a
So the
horrible.
implication is not that the tape led to the asphyxiation.
Yes, people think that that they think that the reason that it was a fixed asphyxiation by duct tape. I think it was done after the fact, but I don't know. I don't know that.
But just out of curiosity, if let's just say take Casey, take Ms. Anthony off the table here, and we're just saying whoever killed this child. Let's say it was an accident. They were trying to do something. What the heck would you be trying to do wrapping tape around a kid's head? Well, what justification is there for such a thing?
None.
And how would the child have asphyxiated if it wasn't for, why is there smell of chloroform?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, that this case was very circumstantial, mostly because of the time that had passed from Kaylee going missing. That was the point of that. I don't think that there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for putting duct tape around your child's head post-mortem or to try and kill her. There's no excuse for it. But what I'm saying is the reason that she got off was because they overcharged her, and they should have charged her with something that the jury could tangibly but there was a lot of scientific, evidence going on here and a lot of experts. And unfortunately, since there was no cause of death, that's how you get a not guilty, because she was found guilty on other charges of, I think, not reporting, a child that went missing, and she served time for that kind of stuff and so on and so on. But I mean, that's really the, yeah, like Kelsey said here, without clear proof that the tape was used to kill her, the jury couldn't convict her of murder beyond a reasonable doubt. That's how she was let off. And I understand it. I don't agree with it. I think that the prosecution screwed up big time. They should have never went after the death penalty without a cause of death, ever. Yes, she got in trouble for lying to cops. Yes, Josh, totally agree. Tape was after accidental death. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I'm saying, I don't understand why you would do that. I know that she was put into a bag, and that was also duct taped up. It's disgusting.
But what I'm getting at is that even if your theory is, now again, I keep wanting to emphasize over and over, because people have got to remember that this case was tried and this person was found innocent.
Yeah.
But if your speculation is that she was involved, she was drugging the child died accidentally, then the question is, why are you drugging the child? Is it not an elimination situation? To get the kid out of the way, to quiet them, to be able to go out and do what it is that you want, because you see the person as an impediment. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that the point?
I think so. And Rich Buddy here says there was plenty of circumstantial evidence, though, Josh. Yes, there was a bunch of, but there was no cause of death. And that's what they hung their hat on, that this was a murder. And there was, unfortunately, there was no circumstantial evidence proving that it was murder.
Do we know anything about how Casey Anthony acted in that period of time between the child going missing and the discovery of the body?
She acted totally normal, and she was partying her ass off. And it was a big point at trial that, she just didn't seem to care. That's what I thought. But okay, I get it, Plant Lady. It was ruled a homicide, but how? What's the cause of death?
Homicide just means that a human died by another person's hand,
But
but it
who
could have
and
been
how?
homicide that was non-intentional.
Correct. It's and that's the point. And I know, like, I get it. People are going to argue. I'm just telling you, I'm with you guys. If you believe that she was, this is just me, but if you believe that she's guilty of whatever it is you feel, I'm with you. I won't argue with you. All I'm telling you is that's the reason that she got acquitted. I don't think it's a great, I just don't think the prosecution did their job. And then Jose Baez, who, by the way, is one of the top defense lawyers, but you know, I don't know if I've told you this, but I had a conversation with him once, and
Really?
yeah, it was on Instagram. He actually, I commented on one of his photos, and then he DM'd me, and I called him a scumbag, and then he called me a douchebag, and then we actually had a conversation. But I thought that his tactics were foul. I didn't like, and I couldn't believe that the judge allowed it. I was shocked because the judge had every right to stop that, and he didn't. And I thought it was just but you know what? That's his job, to see what he can get away with to defend his client, and the judge allowed it. I don't think it should have been allowed, because there was no actual evidence or direct evidence or anything like that to prove her case. And I think that he was the scapegoat,
Right.
and they drug this man through the mud like they have done so many times on so many other people. But I was really shocked that the judge would actually allow that defense. I mean, and I don't know if that played a big part in it or not. I think that one of the biggest part was they couldn't rule the cause of death. And, like, look, if her fingerprints were all over that bag, or all over, the laundry bag and the duct tape and all that stuff, we'd be talking a different case this day. Or, something, she would probably have been found guilty of something there. But her fingerprints weren't there. But there was a lot of circumstantial evidence, but that's not what they based their case on. And I wish, but you don't get to go back and redo it. And I'm sure that if there are interviews out there with the prosecution or the judge, I'm sure that most people felt that she was responsible in some way. But it's up to the prosecution to present their case without a beyond a reasonable doubt, and they didn't. I don't think, which is, yeah, I don't know, but I think that Kaylee was in the way of her lifestyle, her partying, and that her parents weren't going to put up with it, and it went south from there.
Well, it's very interesting because I always think about what goes through the minds of people who theoretically, which is what you're suggesting, I am not, but I refuse to. But what goes through the minds of people that get away with a murder or something like that, who do it and then have to walk through the world, OJ style, with their head high and look like, gee, I dodged a bullet, legally, and I'm innocent, And it always reminds me of in the book of Numbers. It says, "Be sure your sin will find you out." And in the end, one way or another, you're not running away from it,
Well, I
whether
mean,
it's in this life or the next.
yeah, you're right about that. And it reminds me of, you're right, the OJ thing where, he wanted to, after he was acquitted, and they had that party at his house, and he wanted to take everybody out for dinner, and he called to get a reservation at a certain restaurant, and they refused his reservation. They didn't want anything to do with him, even though he was found not guilty. Now we're not going to take your reservation. I mean, and he was I mean, for the most part, was sort of ostracized from everything. He lived good because he had a huge pension from playing in the NFL, but he wasn't endorsable anymore. I mean, some people used him for interviews and paid for, and that's kind of what Casey will end up having to do. I don't know how many clients she'll get. I'm sure there's weirdos out there that would love to I don't know exactly what her business will be, but there will be people out there that, that ask her for her services.
Let me ask you something. Let's say, for the sake of fantasy, that this is a person who was somehow responsible and never told anybody that, right? Or is, kept it to themselves. And then they're doing advocacy work. What does that mean? I mean, in other words, are you suggesting that it is or isn't possible that somebody feels a kind of remorse, an amendment of life, trying to undo
I
guilt?
sure.
Or are you suggesting that a person who, in this fantasy, in this thought experiment, did this accidentally or otherwise, is just trying to get attention and money, capitalize in a using kind of way? Or is the idea that this is a person who had nothing to do with it, has been heartbroken for years over it, and has now decided to go into this kind of work to prevent other people from having to deal with tragedy? I think the jury is out on that in terms of what people want to think. But all around, I mean, that there seems to be something interesting driving it, you know. But I think in the absence of other information, I'm just going to say I don't know what it means.
Yeah.
Just give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
to people who see her as a person who got away with at least an accidental homicide, if not murder, they're disgusted by the whole idea. I mean, I have every single person that tells me they see her on social media says, "Ugh, cringe, disgusting." But
and that's the hell
who
that
knows the motive?
and
Yeah,
that's the hell that she has to deal with for the rest of her life. I mean, she will always be top mom who, didn't report her daughter. I mean, the facts that there are facts out there that she did not report her daughter missing, that she lied about many, many things. And it wouldn't be that hard to believe that she is and was responsible for the death of her daughter. It just wasn't they just weren't able to prove what they were trying to prove in court. And unfortunately, that happens. I do believe that if they would have charged her lesser, then she probably would have they probably could have gotten her on something still major,
right.
but not what they charged her with. And
Yeah,
I
a
think
really interesting case. Yeah,
yeah, a lot of legal experts believe that she was overcharged. I'm not a legal expert, but I absolutely believe that's the reason that she got off. Not because she's innocent of anything, but because the case that they were trying to prove against her wasn't.
did anybody ever talk to any of the jurors? Any of the papers or anything? Get a hold of the jurors and get an
From
idea
what
what
I
the
understand,
deliberations were?
that they just weren't comfortable putting her to death. That they believe that she had some involvement, but you know, still, I mean, they just
Interesting. Incidentally, Josh, do you consider yourself a victim's advocate? I always
um,
wondered that. I mean, would you be lumped into that
I don't know.
category?
Probably not. I don't think.
But you do a great deal of advocacy for victims. I
Yeah,
think
but
we all do.
that's
Right.
not. It's not a title that I go around telling. Like I'm a this. That I'll advocate for somebody under any circumstance when I think that they're being, that they've been wronged or harmed. So I wouldn't consider. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. What about
Do you
you?
think that well, I mean, I work for I'm on the Cold Case Foundation, and then the work I do is certainly I'm regularly advocating for victims. Absolutely. But I think, that as a title, it's an interesting thing. I mean, to me, it's part of what I do. It's part of my wider work. But
Yeah,
I
that's
just was curious if you use the title. And I think in many ways you are. And I was just curious. I mean, um,
look. I have
well,
been, and
oh,
I've told
go
this
ahead.
before. I've been in organizations that do advocacy work, Victim Witness here in California is one of the big um, advocates for victims of violent crimes, which I have been involved with since I was very young, and even to this day, still uh, have a relationship with Victim Witness, and I will always. I have talked to many children from broken homes where they lost their parent or they lost a parent due to the same sort of circumstances that had happened to me. And so if that's what you want to call it, I guess so, but I don't see myself as an advocate. I don't know why. I couldn't tell you why. I don't know. I wish
Hmm.
that I did, but I
I
don't
mean, I
think.
think you don't use the title, but you still do it, right? I mean, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. You're still doing it. You just don't label yourself that way.
No, I don't think so, and I think I have a unique uh experience that is even in the court system. I mean, I know all about, trials and plea deals and, parole hearings. I've been a part of all that stuff for a very, very long time. A lot of mail that comes to me comes from the prison and the court because of my father, who's still actively locked up, serving a 25 to life term. So, in that sense, I mean, I guess yes. I would try to help anybody that I could in any way with any sort of with anything though. That's the thing. Like if I saw somebody fall in the street, I remember one time a homeless man who was, by the way, and I don't mean to say it like this, but he was just when I used to work down on Broadway here in town. And I mean, this guy was just he was a nuisance. He would pee in the parking lot. He would throw his crap. You know how it was just he was a homeless man. And
Yeah.
um, I remember I was looking out the window one time and he had a seizure from an alcohol withdrawal. I saw him fall in the middle of the road. It was on the freeway. And I ran outside and I grabbed him, picked him. Wasn't very hard to pick up. And I put him on the sidewalk and I called 911. Nobody else was willing to seem to do that. And I just, for some reason, could not. I thought about that for a very long time and I had people that like came over and they were like, "Did you pull him out of the road?" And I said, "Yeah." And they're like, "Why would you do that?" Like, what the hell are you talking about? Just kind of, and I could not believe that people felt that way. It was weird to me. Still is to this day.
I'm
Because
proud of you for that.
he was a human.
I'm
I saw
proud of
I
you
saw
for
it
doing
happen.
that.
He was a human.
Yeah.
He ended up passing away. But I remember he thanked me. And I said, "Yeah, of course, man." And they're like, "Oh, I can't believe you touched him." It's like, what? It's a human.
It's so funny, Josh, the weird things we have in common. I also pulled a man out of a road who died. He had been a hit and run by an alcoholic. I mean, a person. I was told that the person who was accused had a history of having done it before, an alcoholic, but he got away with it. I moved the guy to the side of the road.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I saw so clearly the guy who did it cleaning up the scene, lifting the guy's shoe and everything else. He had hit him riding a bicycle. And when I got to the police station, they said, "Are you sure you can confidently ID this guy?" I said, "Oh, yeah." They said, "Are you confident that you know what alcohol, somebody acutely intoxicated looks like?" I said, "I'm a clinical psychologist with a license. I
Yeah.
have to know what it looks like, you know?"
Right.
And when I got into the room where they were all lined up, they had um, put false beards on the guys that were lined up with this guy with this very distinct beard. And I picked the wrong guy because they all looked alike. They all
Mm.
look like, little Santa Clauses at Christmas time or something. And that man died. I remember he was choking on blood and everything, and I kind of turned him so he wouldn't. When the ambulance came, we turned. He was turned, and
Sure.
so that he
Sure.
wouldn't die and everything. And I was, there with them, and he died. It was very hard on me. So, I remember that. I moved that guy like nothing. I mean, it didn't even dawn on me to
I
be
mean,
concerned that his blood was getting all over the place and everything. I
I've
just
done it for my
did it.
worst enemy.
Yeah,
And by the way,
they're human beings.
I wasn't particularly fond of the fella myself because every time he messed up the parking lot, I had to clean it up. And he did it quite often. I mean, he was a pain in the butt. And I would have rounds with him where I go, dude, come on, you can't, first of all, you can't just throw, but I remember just watching him. And another thing was, and I didn't even think about this till after the fact, but I was scared that he was going to get ran over because the traffic was coming. And I mean, he fell into the road. And then I started thinking, like, what if if I didn't do that? And no, it didn't seem like there were other people around that had no intention of touching him whatsoever because he was dirty and he lived outside and, so on and so on. What if somebody else had run over him? And I did, and they had to live with that because I didn't want to, be a normal human.
Well,
He was,
Josh, what you're basically saying is that it's understandable that a human being would consider certain things an inconvenience, but they're supposed to not be able to feel that way when the so-called inconvenience is a human, which gets right to the heart of the case that you're talking about, your
yeah,
sense of what happened in the case. And, I mean, imagine the notion that you're just kind of irritated that a person is in the way. And, remember what I said about how things that go on in the small scale can go on in the state scale. Um, you're seeing a lot of that now. The
yeah,
reduction of things to the transactional and, who cares if you die? Pay up, that kind
absolutely.
of thing. You're in the way of our goals, get out, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. You
And,
see,
you kind of makes you wonder where the human heart went.
yeah, I agree with you.
So
Dr. Gary,
but you're right. It's a beautiful thing though, Josh. It's very heartening to me. As a kind of bookend to a horrendous story like this, to remember that there are people in the world that are given children that are wonderful to them, that don't, that are, because according to your interpretation of what happened here, that wasn't the case for this child.
I don't think so.
Um, and it's heartening to think that there are still people that will pick people up off the road and care about human beings. So shines a good deed in a weary world.
I've had
And
people
I think it is very heartening and needed, badly needed.
I've had people slander my name up and down the internet before because they don't like me or they don't like who I associate with, and I will pick them up out of the road too, figuratively and spiritually if I could in any way. If
Oh, I know.
somebody asked me for prayer, if my enemy asked me, "Will you please pray for me?" I would absolutely do it. And actually I do. Now, sometimes I feel like my prayers kind of hit the roof and fall back down. That's just how I feel sometimes. But I don't wish ill on anybody at all.
Josh, I was once up for something. I won't say what it was. Advancement of some sort. And the person that was against me in this thing was somebody who was personally very troubled. And they sort of did something to knock me out of the way and get this thing. And a week before they did that, I had been sitting with them somewhere, counseling them through a personal problem to help them. And after they did it, a couple of months later, they said, I know you hate me, but you really helped me. And I did it again. I helped them again. I think, Josh, that in the end, just like I said, your sins will find you out. I also think it's true of goodness. In the end, curtain gets pulled away. We'll learn the truth about everybody. Don't worry about when people say things about you, Josh. You go to bed at night knowing that your conscience is clean, and you let idiots and other people say what they want to say about you. But there's no need to prove anything about yourself.
Still pull them out of the road.
That's the point. You got to do it because otherwise you sink to their level. And you pull somebody out of the road, maybe they'll realize that there are some people in the world that are good, and they won't be so mad at the world all the time. because they've never encountered it before. You know what I'm saying? You gotta do that. It's so important. I can't tell you, Josh, how you, in the butterfly effect kind of way, can set off a change to a person's entire life by being kind to them instead of cruel. And every time I think about this poor kid, this kid that died, you just think, if somebody had just sort of taken her away, she'd be alive today, probably in her 20s, just gotten her the hell out of there. But instead, she's not here, in the path of someone with an issue. It's tragic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, a lot of those cases, especially when you're a little kid and you can't really help yourself and defend yourself, I relate to that a lot, because you're at the mercy of the people that take care of you. And that's how it is when you're older, and that's how it is with the animals.
That's right.
I relate.
Crapshoot.
Okay,
Crapshoot.
like I
Those
said.
of us who have been loved basically got lucky in a crapshoot.
Do you know what I had after my mom died? You know what physically I owned as just a little boy? A sack of clothes in a black trash bag that my sister had to pull around for me until we found a place to be. That's it. That's all. Just a
That was
trash.
home, huh?
It was for about a month and a half. Yeah, it sure was. And I mean, because it took, my grandparents were obviously dealing with legal issues, and then they were dealing with, just the funeral and everything like that. And we bounced around, and we were about to go into foster care because, dumping a couple little kids in someone's lap isn't always that easy. But
Well, Josh, one time when I was working somewhere before where I am now, I had in my office this very interesting antique coin bank that I had found in the garbage. And the person who threw it out had no idea what it was. But it was a mechanical bank from the 1880s that's actually worth a very great deal of money. They thought it was garbage, so they threw it out. I refurbished it and put it there. And a mechanical bank is like a coin operated kind of fun bank, that does something. The dog jumps through the hoop and puts the penny in the bank, or the clown puts the coin in its mouth or whatever. And I love those. Well, anyway, I had it on the desk. And this person came in who had schizophrenia and had been beaten up, was homeless, and a lot of other kinds of things. And they said, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, it's this antique item, and I have a great knowledge of antiques." And so I kind of pulled that out of the trash and cleaned it up, and now it's worth a lot of money, and I think it's very beautiful, and I whatever. And the person said, "What does that have to do with your office? Like, why is it here on the desk?" And I said, "Because I want people to understand that value is in the eye of the beholder, and that sometimes you can find very valuable things in the trash." And that's what that made the person understand that they had a dignity, that they themselves were somebody who, if you looked at them from one perspective, they were a person living in the street. But to someone with the right eyes, they were a treasure.
Well,
And that's the idea, right? It's all in the eyes of the beholder. That baby, if she had been in someone else's hands, might have been treasured.
well, after the funeral and everything, there was sort of a gathering of the families on both sides, because there was two little kids that, needed a home, me and my sister. And I don't remember the event, but my sister did and does. And when they were talking about, my sister she was like 6, and so she was a bit older and knew kind of what was going on. But she says, when my grandparents said, "Look, we're gonna take custody, or we're gonna, go for custody and before they could say Josh and Suzanne, which is my sister, they said Josh. And my sister, and this is told to me by her and many other people. They said Josh, and they hadn't said her name yet, and she grabs me like this and puts me there, and she says, "He's not going anywhere without me." And that was the bottom line, not that that was going to happen, but that's what she thought. And to this day, my sister will call me just randomly. She's, I don't know, I think she just turned 43. And she'll just say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "What?" I'll say, "What?" And she goes, "I'm just checking on you." And I'm always, whenever she calls, I go, "What?" Because I think because sometimes there's something that she needs or something wrong, but sometimes she'll just say, "I just want to know how you're doing." And I wish I did a better job of that, checking on her. I mean, I do, but it's never like you do. She would do anything for me. I think I might have told you this story before, Dr. Gary, and we'll close out with this one.
Yeah.
We were in a little tin boat down the river one day. It was called the Trinity River here in Northern California. And we didn't have any life jackets on. We were, being stupid kids. And I don't remember. I was pretty young. I was 7, 8, maybe. And our boat crashed. We hit a rock. It tipped over and we were scattered everywhere. So we all swim to the shore. All of us were fine. My shoes were lost. And I was walking on these hot rocks and I was crying because my feet were getting blisters. And my sister, she stops and kind of squats down and she says, "Get on." And I said, "What?" And she goes, "Get on." And she piggybacked me 1.5 miles to cool dirt where we could get a ride on the freeway to get back to where we needed to. And at the time, I was thankful for it, but I never thought about it. And I think about that story all the time.
Oh yeah.
And how lucky I was and blessed that my sister would do that. I couldn't believe it. And I sit back and think, and I asked her, I said, "Was that hard?" I asked her, "Was that hard?" And she
Yeah.
goes, "Of course." She goes, "But you're my brother and I had my shoes and you didn't." And I was still small enough. Look, she can give me a piggyback right now, trust me. But at the time I was, kind of a gangly little guy. But she just said, "Get on." And she carried me and I couldn't. And like I said, I think about that all the time. And
Yeah.
pretty amazing, She's
Well,
pretty amazing.
Josh, every one of us, I'm convinced, on those days that are the darkest, we have a kind of jar inside of ourselves where we keep a couple of these memories that warm us up, that remind us that there's love in the world and light in the world, and some people choose goodness. And I always think of well, when it's very, very cold and you put your hands around a hot drink and you get that kind of sensation of being warmed up. And I have memories like that too, moments where you remember the people that you loved that are gone in these beautiful moments that couldn't be captured in a photograph. They were just too alive, like catching fireflies,
Yeah.
in a jar and thinking they're going to light up the same way they do out in the yard. You can't, you have to enjoy them the way. And I think there are moments like that, and then there are these moments where you just can't get over the goodness of a human being and a person who just doesn't have to do what they do, but they do it because they're trying to teach you, well, they're trying to show you how much they love you. And in that moment, you feel a strange mixture of gratitude and confusion about the unfairness of it and
Mm.
how you could ever give anything back to the person that's so beautiful. And in some cases, it saves people's lives.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I've had that happen. I think I told you one of my all-time favorite memories was I was at work and I don't know. I had a bad day or something, and I guess I looked kind of glum. And somebody slipped a note under the door. I assume it was a patient. And the note said, I still could picture it. It said, Dr. Brucato, you look sad. Don't be sad. You warm 100 hearts a day.
Yep.
See? And then I felt better. Because so it's like there are those moments like that they stay with you forever, and you and I think in the darkest times when we're talking about these horrendous cases and all that, you have to have that little resource in you that you could go to and remind you, because otherwise you'll get hopeless. I mean, you listen to these stories like this, what happened to this poor kid, and it's hard. I mean, you wind up looking like her grandmother, with your head
Yeah.
down, sobbing, not well. So I really appreciate that you have a happy memory jar too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have to have one of
I
those.
have a lot of them. And, the thing is that my sister, obviously, there is nothing that anybody could ever do, or that she would ever do, or that I would ever do that would compromise our relationship ever. Nobody could ever get in the way of it. And I'm telling you that she loves her children as much as she loves my children. And
Yeah.
she treats them and the same way with me. I love her children the same way I love my children, and
Well,
I was very blessed in that aspect to have such a protective, loving older sister, because I don't know how I would have done without one. And by the way, she absolutely would smack me in the back of the head growing up and say, "Hey, knock it off," or I mean, she for quite a while, I mean, she was the only one that I would even consider um listening to or being around. I mean, I was always with her, it was just, even though she would dance in front of the TV, to like that 1980s like MTV stuff, and I'd run over there and I'd turn it off and start laughing and run away, and she would chase me and threaten to, choke me, but she would never actually do that. But um, that was just my way of that was me letting my love light shine.
yeah. Well, all I know is one of the things I like about getting to come on here is that it becomes very clear from the messages that I get that if you say certain things into the camera, they get sent out like by passenger pigeon to thousands and thousands of people, and they seem to kind of alight sometimes um, on the shoulders of people who need to hear them. And I appreciate that very much. And I'm sure you get those too. And in
Oh,
that sense, I think there is a ministry-like quality to doing this work. And in that sense, I think you are an advocate for victims. I would bet that there are a lot of people who feel that because they crossed your path, they're a lot better off. And that's a beautiful thing. I'm sorry to Lisa in the audience who is complaining that we need to go back to this being Josh only.
I mean,
I apologize, Lisa. What do you want me to do?
you were
I'll
there.
eliminate myself. Thank you. Of course, I liked the audience better before Lisa was in it. Now, on that note, I'm gonna leave it there. Do you have an
Yeah,
eject button, Josh? You don't.
this is this is the
Bye-bye.
platform that I allow. And by the way, we got a lot
Yeah.
of good feedback about the Patreon thing, so we're absolutely going to do that.
Oh,
Um,
good,
so
good.
so be looking forward to that. And Dr.
And
Gary's,
you could keep out the hoi polloi.
yeah, if you don't want to be there, you don't have to be there. Um,
Right.
but yeah, we're definitely going to do the Patreon thing where you are going to show your skills and about everything that you know, and it's going to be fascinating. I'm excited about that.
That's
So
yeah. All right.
all right.
Well, anyway, I'm gonna stop reading the chat now
Yeah, please
before
do. Don't worry about it.
I turn into Daffy Duck, with the crazy hair and the steam coming out of my ears.
Yeah, if one
Anyway, all right. Well, thank you so much, Josh.
thank you,
I
Dr.
think it was a
Gary.
wonderful show, and I think again, let's see what happens. Look, maybe Miss Anthony, has a real cause here. We don't know.
We'll
I
see.
have no idea. Let's just
Yeah.
see.
we'll see.
Okay.
All right, Dr. Gary.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, there it was, guys. I appreciate it. And I appreciate Dr. Gary. You know, I would appreciate if he didn't be rude to my guests, but you know, I don't know. I don't know why. He's fantastic. So, and I asked him to come on. So, I love you both. All right. Well, anyway, yes, thank you both. Dr. Gary means a lot, and he's a good friend of mine. He's somebody I talk to and reach out to on a daily basis. We're friends. I believe that there's a Lab After Dark scheduled for later this evening. So anyway, be on the lookout for that. Thank you to everybody who joined, hit the like button. Kelsey, thank you for the memberships. Kat sees you. Thank you so much. Josh, thank you. Lori, I know that this was a hard one for you to listen to. I'm sorry about that. I know. And Miss Mystery, thank you guys for being here. And look at that, 24 months. That's, I believe, if my math is correct, that's 2 years of being a member. I appreciate it. Thank you guys again. And we'll see you next time. All right.